Good morning. Sorry about that little glitch in the slides. Nothing like some technology problems first thing in the morning. We're so happy you could join us for our look at middle school. I will be your host and moderator for this event. My name is Adriana Matsky. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions and Middle School and Upper School Admissions Coordinator. So thank you and welcome. A little bit about me. This is my 19th year at the Blake School. My husband and I, in various roles, 7 years in admissions. My husband and I have two children. Our oldest son graduated from Blake in 2016 and is now a college grad and is a first year teacher out in Washington, D.C. And our youngest son is a current junior here at the Blake School. Before we get started, I'm going to ask my colleague, Ms. Ferguson, to introduce herself, a little bit about her role and her family.
Thank you, Adriana. Good morning. I'm Robin Ferguson, and I'm the Assistant Director of the middle school. This is my 8th year at Blake. I began at Blake in the classroom, and so I was a 6th grade humanities teacher teaching our 6th graders English and social studies. And 3 years ago, I shifted into this role. One of my primary functions in this role is student support. So I like to think of my job as sort of all things student life and academics. So I create their schedules, I supervise a lot of their functions, I'm in the lunchroom with them, I'm at carpool, I'm in the hallways. It's my job to have a pulse on who they are as learners and who they are as people. I have 4 children. Our oldest daughter started at Blake in kindergarten when I came to Blake. And our next, she's a 7th grader now. So she could potentially be a classmate of some of your children. And then my next youngest daughter is in 4th grade on the Blake campus. And then just to keep it fun and real, we also have a 3-year-old. So we have a busy household. And I'm glad you chose to join us today.
So we're going to start with a little bit of just information about the Blake School as a whole, and then we're going to do some deeper dives into our middle school, talking about the schedule and courses and such. We are going to have time at the end for questions and answers, so I will invite you to post them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to type them as we're going along as something comes to your mind, and then we'll address sort of those questions either as they come, if it makes sense, or when we get to the end. So this is a snapshot of our middle school campus. We are a 3-campus school. We have a lower school pre-K through 5 in Wayzata. Here at the Hopkins campus, we have another lower school pre-K through 5. And then 6th grade is the start of our middle school. So it's a great time of transition for all of our new 6th graders to join us. We add about 25 kids to the class at 6th grade, and then the 2 campuses are coming together. Our middle school is grades 6, 7, and 8. About 100 to 115 or so in each grade, so about 330 in our middle school. Then we have a 3rd campus in Minneapolis, and that is where our upper school is. That's 9 through 12. Our grades grow a little bit in upper school, about 130 to 135 or so in our grades in the upper school. And again, one of the great benefits of our 3-campus model is that it's a great time of transition again as the kids head to upper school. It's a new space for everybody. We add another 25 or so new students to the grade at 9th grade. So it really allows our kids in 5th grade and 8th grade to be real leaders in their community as well, not having the upperclassmen in their spaces. And also in our upper school, it has a real college preparatory, almost adult-ish type feel because they are in a space designed intentionally for upper grade level learners. One of my favorite things about Blake is our faculty. So of course, a big part of the experience of your students at Blake is our amazing faculty. You'll see here scrolling some information about some of our teachers. You will see that we have A lot of teachers, majority of our teachers who are longtime educators. 75% of our faculty members, pre-K through 12, do have an advanced degree, meaning a master's or a doctorate. And that class size also really lends itself to an exceptional experience here at Blake. 16 is our average class size, K through 12. So in middle school, 16 to 18 is what you're going to find in our classrooms. In upper school, that stays the same even though our grade grows. And that's because the options really expand with AP courses and honor courses, and then just electives really come into play in the upper school. So that 16 as our average class size, that stays all the way with your student through grade 12. At the core of Blake's uh, community is our commitment to pluralism. And we're going to talk about a couple of different ways that that is lived out. But here is some data that helps paint that picture for you of our diverse community. Over 50 languages spoken in the homes of our families. 24% of our students receive need-based financial assistance. They come from over 61 cities and towns, which is another one of the great things that our family really cherishes, that our students just family of people that they spend their time with, whether through sports or through school, come from all different communities throughout the Twin Cities. And then 36% of our students identify as a person of color. So this is just, again, some of the ways that our commitment to pluralism lives out at Blake. Again, we'll talk a little bit more, but just to help define that for all of you, how Blake defines a commitment to pluralism is not just having a diverse community, but really engaging across those differences and finding ways to do that. So hopefully that is well articulated and felt throughout today's session. All right, so let's talk about educating our students to be successful in a globally interconnected world in ways that happens. We do partner with over 40 local community organizations through service, and we have service throughout pre-K through 12 here at Blake. In middle school, we have a couple of service days that we have where everybody in the school is in service. We have an all-school K through 12 day in the fall called Legacy Day, and that day is built around service and community. And then we also have a community service club in both the middle school and upper school. So service is definitely a part of our students' experience. And another way that this is lived out is through our global immersion programs in our upper school. So every year we offer about 3 credit-bearing global immersion programs, sending kids to Vietnam and Cuba and India. New Zealand was on the schedule for this year. But one of the great and unique aspects of our global programs is that we offer high school credit as part of this experience. So we don't just send kids to other countries to learn about other cultures or other various topics. There's real education and thought as part of that program. So they're doing study for about a week before they go and a week when they return as well. And then in return, they get high school credit for that. The way that our financial assistance works is if a family receives financial assistance for tuition, we do help to fund one trip for your students' time in the upper school as well. Arts and athletics are absolutely essential to the academic experience for our students. Pre-K through 12 Snapshot is 45 concerts and or drama productions in one school year. And 83% of our upper school students participate in athletics. So let's take a little bit of a look of what that means here in our middle school specific. So here's a list of our athletics. Here at Blake, athletics start in grade 7. So you'll see here, unless noted, and you'll see just a couple, hockey, yoga, and ultimate frisbee, where they're just upper school specific. All of these sport offerings are available to our students starting in 7th grade. Here in the middle school, taking it in a little bit closer look is physical education at Blake. So we offer PE as part of one of our core classes here in the middle school, recognizing that it is important for learners at this age to still be active in lots of different ways. So they have physical education in all their years in the middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8. And Robin, as we start to dive into these middle school specific slides, I'll just invite you to jump in and add anything along the way. So here you can just take a peek at sort of our philosophy and approach to our physical education class. In addition, in partnership with our PE classes, we do offer middle school wellness, or I shouldn't say offer, we do require it in grades 6, 7, and 8. So you can see here in grades 6 and 7, our focus is to provide students with an opportunity to gain a better understanding of the social and emotional topics that are integral to their physical and mental and emotional development. And then in grade 8, the course is about educating and empowering students to make well-informed and thoughtful decisions regarding their mental, physical, and social development. So we do have units of wellness throughout their PE classes in grades 6, 7, and 8. We are going to take a deeper dive into the middle school schedule as we get a few slides further. But here's just a snapshot of, again, the context of this is talking about physical activity and arts as an integral part of Blake. Here, middle school specific is how arts sort of lives in our schedule. Starting next year, we do have a new schedule that will be rolled out. And again, Ms. Ferguson will do a little deeper dive into that and what that means. But in our new 8-block schedule, we have several of these blocks. This is how this will work: 2 blocks for arts. Is that correct, Ms. Ferguson? So you'll have a rotation of visual arts, theater, wood shop, and computer science. And then your other art block will be for a music. Everybody in middle school takes choir, band, or strings. All right, so Ms. Ferguson, I'm going to have you jump in here, but I'm going to start by saying here in the middle school, our sort of code to live by in the middle school is what we call the HART code. It stands for, so it's HARRT, and you can see here it stands for honesty, acceptance, responsibility, respect, and trust. So Ms. Ferguson, this would be a great time if you could share a little bit with our attendees about what does that mean for a middle schooler? How is the HART code sort of communicated, and then just a part of our overall expectations of our middle school community?
Sure, Adriana. So we meet as a middle school community. In our new schedule, we will meet 1 out of every 8 days. So it'll be approximately every other week, and we will gather as a full middle school in the MPAC in our theater, and we will have an all grades assembly. Every assembly that we have, our director starts off and welcomes students and does what we call a message from the heart. And so he will take and he will choose different letters. So he might, oftentimes it's responsive to where our community is at. So for example, in the lunchroom, maybe we aren't doing the best job as a community in cleaning up after ourselves and being respectful of putting away our dishes and cleaning up our spaces. So he might have a message from the heart that talks about how we have a responsibility to keep that space, that we care about the Taher folks who work so hard to prepare our meals, and as the freedom and independence that we get to choose our spots and to move in and out of the lunchroom and stay for as long as we need, that comes with the responsibility of making sure that we are cleaning up properly and caring for our community members. We often will have follow-up then where a teacher will build off of that in class, or we'll have specific grade level follow-up with different grades. So as you can imagine right now, our students are in a remote setting. Our youngest learners right now have been having a little bit of difficulty resisting the urge to Google Chat. And so I just did a class meeting and I hit on all of these letters with them and talked about how it's really important that you're honest in what you're doing on your computer. We need, if someone says they want you to stop something, you need to accept that they want you to stop. You have a responsibility to use this device for academic purposes. It's important to be respectful of your teachers who are putting time into creating lessons, your classmates who want to learn, your family who expects that you're engaging, and yourself. And that when you do these types of things, it builds trust, and then we are able to do so much more as a community. And so that's kind of how we use the Heart Code. Is we will have oftentimes our director will share a story, or we'll share an inspirational video or something like that. We try as much as possible to hit on the different themes, but we do try to ground them in something that is actually something impacting our community. Not surprisingly, we often start the year off with acceptance, because we really want to have lots of messages about being open to new friendships, being open to new experiences at that grade level, really just being open to yourself as a learner and how you might grow in that year. And then we'll often kind of build on the different letters from there. In my role as assistant director, I do have discipline as a piece of my role. And this is where I often use as a starting point. We'll focus in on the letter where a child had a misstep, and then we go from there.
Thank you. All right, so here is a graphic for you to sort of take a peek at our schedule. I know a lot of families and students are always asking, can you talk about what the schedule looks like? And so at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Ms. Ferguson. Again, hand it right back to you and ask you to really sort of talk us through a schedule to help our students and families to really understand what a day, what a week, what an 8-day rotation looks and feels like for our students in the middle school.
Sure. So this will be a brand new schedule for your child and current Blake students. So that's another, it's always nice if you're transitioning at the same time others are transitioning. So it will be new for all of us. Some of the highlights. So last January, we hired a man by the name of Andrew Taylor, a scheduling consultant, and we had been working for about 2 years, and we're really interested in making some changes to our schedule. And so he took feedback that we had given him, and he really encouraged us to move in this direction. And so some of the highlights of our schedule: every 8 days, a student would see their classes 4 times. When you look at your odd days, so day 1, 3, 5, and 7, you'll notice it's the same classes meeting. So a student will have 4 class periods that meet on the odds, 4 class periods that meet on the evens. Then within that 8-day rotation, there is a cascade effect. We are most excited about this cascade because we just see really different children. And when you think about your own child, your child might be a morning person. Your child might be really difficult to get out of bed. They might be hitting their stride at 2 in the afternoon. So children bring different selves depending on time of day. And so we are able in this cycle where in each class, a teacher will see that student in one of those 4 blocks, and it will shift in that 8-day cycle. It will be published at the start of the year. So as a family, in terms of planning purposes, it will be published for the entire year. And so you'll know on a specific date in a certain month, this is a day 5 schedule, something like that. One of the things that's neat about another thing that's neat about this is I love the landing pad. So the landing pad is an advisory period. It's a place where students, that's where they will report when they get to school. Our advisories typically have about 10 or 11 students, and advisors are often classroom teachers of that child in most cases. And so students have a place to land, learn about any special schedules. This is another place where we can have slides to emphasize our heart code. And then it's a nice kind of soft start to the day, a way to get materials together. And if a student was missing something, an advisor can remind them, remember, you have to turn in that Spanish homework we talked about, that kind of thing. And so then from there, you'll notice there's a break in between each class. We love that too. And so in our old schedule, it had a very frenetic pace. And it is very common for our students to linger after class and want to talk a little bit more to a teacher, or they're buzzing about something that they learned and they're talking with a classmate on the way out the door. And so we're really excited that we're not, shuttling them from class to class to class so quickly, but that they have time to really digest or ask that last question or share about some sporting event that they had, but that we can make connections and not feel so rushed. And then the other thing that you'll notice is the X period in here. So the X period, I hit on that already, but that's where we would have that assembly, or where we would have an advisory period that's longer than a 10-minute check-in, where we would go through a curriculum. We're in the process of adopting an advisory curriculum for next year so that we can work on organizational skills and other executive functioning type skills for our students. Tutorial, that's a real signature piece of our middle school program, a time for students to get extra help and meet with their teachers. That would happen during the X period. And then Launchpad at the end, essentially what that is everyone will be heading back to their lockers, and it's carving out deliberate time so that students can think through what they need to bring home. Our previous schedule, the day ended and students were off and running. And you probably know this as a parent, that you're maybe running back to school to get that saxophone that was forgotten, or that math book that, or the planner or something like that. And so we're hoping that being really intentional about the bookends of the day will provide just more of that support that this age really benefits from.
Thank you. Here's a slide. I know a lot of families and students who look at Blake. The students tend to gravitate towards this bulletin board and get excited about some of the offerings that we have through our clubs and co-curricular opportunities. So whether it be math team or robotics or coloring club, we have a wide spectrum of offerings. Robin, can you tell us again, remind us how this will fit into a student's schedule? Because this is often the thing that the kids tell me that they're really excited about, trying to find ways to engage in our school beyond the classroom.
Sure. So you're going to get a real sneak peek before the rest of our community. So our committee right now, we're trying to decide if we want to have a designated time during our X block for these clubs, or if it's better to have them sprinkled throughout. And there's pros and cons of each choice. Currently, for the last 2 years, we've had a designated block for these clubs. The benefit of that is then all children participate in a club. And this year they're able to do 2 clubs. The drawback is that there are students who would like to try 8 clubs, quite frankly, especially our 6th graders, because they don't have the opportunity to do organized sports through Blake yet. And so clubs are very popular among our 6th graders. A great opportunity to make connections, a great opportunity to try something new and see if you like it, and see if it's something that you might be good at and that you might enjoy. And so we're still trying to figure that part out. We do have a 65-minute lunch block. And during that time, children only need to do 2 things. They need to eat and they need to have recess. And so we have a daily commitment to recess, which is pretty uncommon at the middle school level, actually. That's one of the first things that often gets cut. And we have prioritized that in our schedule because we feel it's very important that 11 to 14-year-olds have that time to run around to learn by playing with one another and all the negotiation that often involves. And so we're still trying to figure out if we want to open it up where they could do it at really any day of the 8-day cycle. Someone could offer during the lunch block, or if it's better to have real intentional where we have it on a specific day. My guess is we'll land somewhere in between, and we have that as well this year. But one of the big plugs, I've never worked at a school that had clubs like this, and this is my 21st year at middle grades level, and I've been at a number of schools, and so they're often multiple grades coming together. We have everything from like Rubik's cubing to affinity spaces, where we have, like, for example, an LGBTQIA plus confidential group that meets. We've got just so many offerings that there really truly is something for everyone. So it's been something. And then also children can start their own club. So right now, next week, I had an email from a very eager 6th grader who is excited about starting up a newspaper club. And so I'm going to work with him next week and figure out what does that entail? Is that print? Is that digital? What is his vision for that? And then we'll make that happen for him.
Thank you so much. All right. So another awesome aspect of our middle school is all of our, it says middle school socials, but also I like to, I think it also is appropriate to refer to them as just community opportunities where our 6th graders do a scavenger hunt or an ice cream social. We have a barbecue for 7th and 8th graders before a football game in the fall. The picture here of the kids skiing is we have a winter fun day on a no school day that our parent association coordinates. Anything else that you want to add to this little piece here, Ms. Ferguson?
I think I would just add that as someone who's worked at K-8 schools and then also PK-12, and then ones where, like at Blake, we're PK-12, but our focus is really on 6-8. I really love our socials, and they are perfectly appropriate for those grade levels. And I think this is an area where we really shine. We have some really neat social opportunities. I'll give an example of one that happened pre-pandemic, but we had our 7th and 8th graders, and we were finding that enrollment in the registration for an event when you're offering a dance has been dwindling over the last several years. You're going to get certain kids who, they want to do the dance, but many are uncomfortable with just coming to do a dance. And so parents were looking at that, and a committee came together. And so they hired a DJ, but they kept the lights on the whole time, just real upbeat music, so that really you were coming to listen to music versus coming to go to a dance and all the potential pressures that might go along with that. They had an area of the school where they had Carnival Games. So we had a cakewalk going on, we had ring toss, we had just those ducks, that kind of thing. They had inflatables in our gym where kids were jousting and bouncing around like they were little kids. It was just darling. They had these racing cars. They had kayaks in the pool. We have such an amazing facility. So they had kayak races that were happening down there, and then those were for prizes. And you can imagine this is a dream for a 12-year-old. So we had a great turnout. And so I think our Parents Association, which anyone can be a part of, does a great job of really listening to the kids and trying to put together socials that are appropriate. In the past, our 6th grade dance was more formal than, quite frankly, I would argue it ever should be at this age group for an 11 and a 12-year-old. And so they made it a glow theme party. So we had 11 and 12-year-olds showing up with like those glow sticks taped to their body and like skeletons, and they were just bouncing around having the time of their lives, and it was so fun. They were so sweaty by the time their parents picked them up, and it was just wonderful. And so I do think we do a very good job of having these. There are at least 3 a year, 3 big ones, and then there are smaller ones along the way as well. So it's one of my favorite things that parents are really committed to working with the school and putting together.
Okay, so as our wizard behind the screen, Miss Falsani has message to all of you. We're going to take some time now to just answer your questions. So please, I invite you to pose whatever questions you can. In a crazy year like this year, this is one of the few opportunities where you have somebody from the division specific that you can sort of engage with and ask questions of. I do have one question here that I will read aloud that everybody might be wondering. So not middle school specific, but just wondering about, because of COVID, how families can really see the school and meet other kids sort of going through this process. So what I can tell you is, if you're comfortable doing so, we are offering in-person tours. And while we've been remote through the holidays, we're going to be back to our hybrid mode that we started the year with starting next week. So if you do come in for an in-person tour, again, only if you're comfortable doing so, you will get to see the school sort of with students and teachers to help get a sense of the school community. As far as meeting other students, as an admissions office, for our new students, we do offer opportunity in the spring for all of our new students to meet one another. Typically, of course, it's in person and we go bowling and it's awesome. We recognize fully that that likely probably won't be able to happen. So we're already having lots of conversations about ways we can have our new students get to meet one another, and then always try to include some of our current families as well. So know that, yes, we will continue to work with the middle school and our parent association to figure out a safe way to have students meet one another. And then fast forward to the summer, again, we have offered sixth grade orientation over the summer in June and August. And of course, with COVID, I don't know what that will look like, but I can assure you that we will do our best to find ways for students to feel comfortable in this. We know it's such a difficult process to go through without being able to come and spend a whole day here like you would in a normal season. Let me scroll to see some of these other questions are coming in fast and furious, so that's great. So this one is asking about, it says, can you share with us what the math schedule looks like during the week and how many minutes of math the kids receive? Same for reading and language arts. So let me just go back to that slide.
Sure, I can take this one.
Yeah.
So all of our class periods are 70 minutes in length. And so when you look at it in an 8-day cycle, a student would have 4 70-minute classes of math, of English, of each of those different blocks. It is quite common for students to use tutorial time in higher numbers for extra support in math, also in languages, and also in English. We do see higher numbers for science too, where students want extra time to do, we have a lot of labs that we offer in our middle school. And so students will often want extra time to work on their lab write-up, that type of thing. And so it's not uncommon for kids to use the tutorial to carve out even additional time, but each of our class periods is 70 minutes, meeting 4 times in an 8-day cycle.
Great, thank you. Do you want to actually talk about sort of our approach to the placement for new students for math and languages? We get students every year coming obviously from so many different schools and so many different experiences in both of those departments. Can you talk about how we do that for new students?
Sure. So I'm the person that works with your family for placement testing. And essentially, what we do is once you get your once you get accepted to Blake, then we send you course registration materials. In that course registration, you will tell us more information about your child. And so as we move up in grades, we become more specialized in the offerings. For our sixth grade, most students are in Math 6. Most students are and sort of have a similar track on everything. And then again, from there, it starts, the options kind of start to open up, and we see different levels of things. Big exception would be language. Students, many of our sixth graders come in with at a novice level, but then we also get a cohort of students every year who've been coming from an immersion experience. And so what happens with the placement testing is I look at what you tell me in the course registration materials. If your child is at a novice level, then there's no need for placement. We place your child in novice. If your child has prior experience and it seems like enough experience where they would be at a different level than novice, then I set up a day and it will be done virtually. So your child Zooms in with me along with all of the other new students who need placement testing. And then I move them into breakout rooms with the different teachers. So let's say your child is coming to us from a French immersion school. They would meet with our French teacher, Madame Stevens. She would do an oral assessment. Then they would come back from the breakout room and be with me in the main room, where then they would do a written assessment. At the sixth grade level, we do not currently do an assessment for music. If that changes, I would certainly let you know. At the seventh and eighth grade levels, we do assessments for music because we have lots of different ensemble options. And so, and then as it relates to math, we look at a number of things. We look at what you tell us about the coursework they've taken. We look at their transcript to see what the most recent coursework is. We'll look at any standardized testing that you provide. And then when we take all of that into consideration, depending on the grade level that your child is entering, we often will have a math placement test. All of these assessments are scored by our department chairs and the teachers that are the lead teachers in those areas. And so they work in tandem to try to determine the best fit. Occasionally we get it wrong. And occasionally we will put a student at a level that, and we will recognize early on that we need to alter their schedule and they need to be in a different level, sometimes up, sometimes down. And so we have those conversations in September as those come up. But yeah, it's a lot of back and forth, a lot of conversation. And then when a child receives their placement, if a family has further questions, they're always welcome to follow up with department chairs, because ultimately we want your child to be successful in the class. That's the point of placement testing, is we want them to be at a level that's comfortable yet will stretch them.
Thank you. I'm going to go back a slide as we have a question here that I think this slide will be helpful to address. Somebody's asking about health class. Schools offer health class. And so how this is illustrated and how it works here is it's part of their PE. So on the screen with the slide where it said physical education, this is where the wellness units are part of the student's experience. Do you want to add to this? Their question is specific, wondering about health class, and then asking the question, is hygiene and reproductive health part of the middle school curriculum?
Yes and yes. And so what it looks like for next year is that it depends on the grade your child is entering. So if your child is entering into eighth grade, they actually will select electives for physical education. So there's 4 quarters. One of the quarters is wellness. So for that entire quarter, they are in the wellness course. That's where you're getting the more advanced material about reproductive health. As you can imagine, that's going to build from 6th to 7th to 8th. 7th grade, then, they are in basically a physical education 7 class. Within that, they have units of swimming, of ice skating, of cross country skiing, of basketball, badminton, you name it. And a quarter of that, they will also go to wellness. It's just that they won't have 4 quarters that are different. It will be 3 quarters of physical education, 7. For that 1 quarter, they have wellness. And you can think of it as health and sort of broadened, but it is a lot of health concepts. Sixth grade looks a little bit different. Sixth grade has less wellness. They still have quite a bit of wellness, but it isn't an entire quarter's worth. And it's more of they pull it out instead of having an entire quarter, they will have in an 8-day cycle, 3 days where they have physical education 6, and the 4th day of the class is wellness. It's not necessarily on that day 4, but it in an 8-day cycle. So theirs is more woven into the year. Some of that is we really believe at the 6th grade level, we want them running around, we want them moving their bodies instead of having like an entire quarter where we sort of put a pause on that at school, at least. So many of our kids are so active outside of school too. But Amy Walters, we have one teacher who sort of spearheads those efforts. She will send at the start of each wellness quarter, she will send a newsletter to families, and she is very transparent. She shares all of the slides that she uses in class. She links resources. She will have, like conversation starter questions, tips for parents. And so she loves talking about health. So it's her jam. Yeah. So
thank you. One a common question that we get is, so the earlier question was about sort of like how can our student meet other kids? And so I talked about like our new student events and summer orientation. But what I would love it if you could help add for students and families who are with us, if you could talk a bit about from the school's perspective. So first day of school, those first few weeks, how does the school support students in their transition, in both in middle school and especially as a new student?
Sure. So if your child is entering at 6th grade, everyone is truly new. And so Adriana had already hinted at that. Because we have different campuses, it feels really new to everyone. And so we have 40 students coming from our Blake campus, 40 from Highcroft, and about 25 or so that are coming new to Blake. And so even the students on our Blake campus for lower school, like my 4th grade daughter, they don't ever come into our building. And so when they get to middle school, it is new to them too. So we have a lot of intentional orientation activities that we do at the 6th grade level in particular, because it is truly new for everyone. And even students who've been at Blake since they were in pre-K, they are getting to know, they only know that cohort of 40. They don't know the 105 that the class becomes. And so for 7th and 8th, we have to be more intentional, because it isn't a natural entry point, like say coming at 6th would be, or 9th or something like that. But we still do have quite a few, especially at the 7th grade level, that we get every year. And so one of my jobs when I do your child's schedule is to read your narrative information that you give at course registration, read it really carefully, and try to think about, okay, so your child's really into art. This particular teacher might be a great advisor, or, oh, I actually think they would really hit it off with this child. And so we do quite a bit of social engineering in their schedules and in their classes, because we hand schedule. And so that's happening. We have our counselor and Adriana work together, and they do some periodic check-ins with students who are new. One of the biggest things that you can do as their parent is encourage them to go to those socials I was talking about, to try out a club, maybe to try out one of those sports, maybe go out for cross country, even though you've never really done running. Families whose children try something report at much greater numbers, percent of happiness and sort of ease of transition. And so I think those are kind of the big things we do. When you have such small class sizes too, you just get to know kids really well. And we do track who's new. We have Adriana makes slides that have information about each of the new students, what they're into, what they're passionate about, their strengths. And so teachers have quite a bit of information going into the year. There are cute faces on the slide. So we know who those kids are, and I think we do a good job of that. As much as you can encourage, if you hear a name at home that they're talking about from class, get out that directory and see if you can set something up for your kids to get together outside of school. That's something that I often recommend for families. And I think another thing to keep in mind is friendships are ever changing at the middle grades level. So my daughter started in kindergarten and she has completely different friend group this year than last. And so just knowing that friendships shift regardless of if you're new, and just try and keep throwing things out there, and eventually friendships stick.
Yeah, I echo that as a parent of kids who were longtime students at Blake. One started in second and one started in pre-K. Throughout their time, and even for our oldest, who is now, past his time at Blake, their friendships have always evolved from grade to grade and year. They change often, and so an important reminder for sure. I have a question here. It says, is there a social and emotional learning program incorporated anywhere into the curriculum used throughout the school by teachers and others, or is it strictly just reserved for health and wellness?
Currently, it is housed in wellness. That's one thing we're looking at, and we're having to make choices because we can't do all things. And so with our advisory curriculum, we're trying to decide, is what they get in wellness satisfying that social emotional development to the point where our advisory curriculum can be more focused on those executive functioning, organizational, time management, kind of advocacy type skills. So that's something that we're still considering, and we're weighing just all of the different pieces with that.
Yeah, thank you. If there's any last questions, I will encourage you to post them before we wrap up. And while we wait to see if any other questions come in, I want to talk about next steps. We did have some questions that asked about the application process. So I'll take it a step back first and just say that if you're still deciding if you want to apply, I encourage you to consider some other virtual events. So I'll make a quick plug. If it happened to work for your schedule, this afternoon at 4, we're hosting an upper school virtual event just like this. So we know that this is a decision that you are trying to make as a family, not just for next year or not just for middle school, but for the long term. So if you're curious about learning more about our upper school, you could attend our event this afternoon at 4, looking at the upper school. In addition, we do have our full pre-K through 12 virtual open house that is on Saturday, January 23rd. That's a 9:30 to 11 event, and that is broken down into a couple of different chunks. So not an hour and a half listening to the same thing, but really sort of like I like to call it a choose your own adventure throughout the event. So that would be something that would give you another way to learn more about Blake to help you decide if this is a school that for which you want to apply for next year. And then last, I will say, if you are ready to make that decision to at least take the next step and apply, you can do so at any time. The application is found online in our website. The decision, however, to apply, the deadline for that is February 15th. There is a checklist of items that you do have to complete as part of that application process. Some of the questions we've gotten is about testing. And I will tell you that in a normal year, yes, there is a testing component of the application process. This year, because of COVID, we are waiving any additional testing. So for this year only, there is not any additional testing that has to be done as part of the application process. So the application checklist is getting transcripts, including standardized test history of your student. 3 teacher recommendations. One of those 3 does have to be a current year teacher. We understand that there's some anxiety over how well this year's teachers might know your student. So that's why only one of those 3 has to be current. So we do require 3 teacher recommendations. Again, the transcripts, including test history, and then an individual Zoom meeting that you will have with me. And that gives me a chance to sit down with you and your student to learn a little bit more, and to answer any more direct questions that you have. So I hope that is helpful in sort of explaining the application process and ways that you can continue to learn about Blake. Robin, was there something you wanted to add?
Well, I just wanted to add when you're finished, I do see two questions in the chat that I don't think we've hit on yet.
Great, thank
One,
you.
one is a question that says, given the current situation with COVID and children attend via distance learning, is there an opportunity for reluctant children to see school in person and meet with other kids?
Yeah, so the tour, a tour is a way that you can come to campus and see something in person right now. As far as meeting other students, there's not a way that you can meet our current students in person right now, beyond just if you see them and have an exchange with them while you're here for a tour. Really, those ways are through our new student events that we would host. We also do connect you with any of our student ambassadors. I've had a few families reach out and request that, would it be possible to have somebody who's in their grade who's at Blake, or who would it be possible to talk to somebody who came to Blake new this year who could reach out? So those one-on-one sort of connections, I'm happy to facilitate those. We also have a whole slew of upper school admissions ambassadors, many of who came in middle school, who are happy to email and communicate with families. So we do try to connect you with current students and families if those would be helpful, but sort of in that larger group setting, we're still trying to figure out what that's going to look like for new students come this spring.
And then the second question, can you share how language classes work if they are fluent in a second language already? So for example, like Spanish. So I can take that one. So we do have students who come in and are fluent. Many of them are native speakers in their home. And so those are ones where we want to work very closely with our lead teachers in those departments and also the department chairs. Sometimes families will decide that their child is fluent, but they don't have as much practice with, say, reading in the language or writing in the language, but their oral proficiency is really strong. And so then they will end up in our most accelerated course where they continue to work on the reading and the writing components. Other families will decide that what we offer at our highest level, that their child already has that. And then we do have students who are fluent Chinese speakers or fluent Spanish speakers who opt to then study another language. So then they are, English speaking, Chinese speaking, and also taking French. So those are more individual conversations, but we have families that choose both pathways.
Great, thank you. All right. Well, with that, I will encourage you that just because our event is over does not mean that our conversation has to end. So I encourage you to reach out, either phone call or email, and I'm happy to answer your questions. If you'd like to connect with Ms. Ferguson further, just reach out and let me know, and we can connect you with Ms. Ferguson as well. So thank you. I'm so glad on a crazy morning like this morning where it is snowing like crazy that we were able to bring this event to you virtually. And I certainly hope that I get to hear and talk with you further. Thank you for joining us. Have a good rest of your day.